Hello and welcome everyone to this special Lesbian Visibility Week edition of our LGBTQ+ Leaders Series. We are thrilled to have you join us today. Our LGBTQ+ Leaders Series is an initiative where we showcase influential figures driving change and equality within the LGBTQ+ community. And through these events, we aim to provide a platform for meaningful discussions, personal stories, and insights into the experiences of leading voices in the LGBTQ+ community. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Roxy Bourdillon, the editor-in-chief of DIVA magazine, a leading global magazine for LGBTQIA+ women and non-binary people. She's been featured on The Guardian's Pride Power list and has been recognised by Attitude magazine as a world-changing LGBTQ+ trailblazer. When she's not fighting the good fight, she co-hosts Pod Diva, a podcast which features interviews, smatterings of queer joy, and is soon to be a published author. Right before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to mention that we are always looking for talented individuals to join the FT. If you're passionate about equality, making a difference, please visit our careers page to explore the exciting opportunities that we have available. And throughout the session, we'd also encourage you to engage with us. And if you have any questions for Roxy or our team, please feel free to ask them through the StreamYard chat. We will do our best to address as many questions as we can during the Q&A section towards the end of this chat. Now, without further ado, welcome Roxy.
Oh, thank you so much, Tamara, and thank you to everyone here. I am so thrilled to be here. It is Lesbian Visibility Week, and I have never felt more like a visible lesbian, and I'm loving it. So thank you so much.
And so I wanted to start, seeing as it is Lesbian Visibility Week, I want to start right at the beginning with the first time you saw yourself represented in the media, and how did that make you feel?
Okay, so the first time I saw myself represented in the media, there was a TV show in the late 90s, early noughties called Bad Girls. And in case you're not familiar with Bad Girls, this was a very camp, actually, drama about bad girls doing bad and sometimes quite homosexual things behind bars. It was set in a prison. And I think that, you know, right from early on, I was getting the message that being queer, being sapphic, being gay, that it was, you know, tantamount to being a criminal. It was something you might get locked up for. So I do remember watching Bad Girls, and I remember feeling both thrilled, because it was really exciting to see two women kiss on screen, my goodness me, but also quite terrified. I guess it's quite confronting in a sense, like seeing, oh wow, yes, I can see myself represented in this. And then even more terrifying, because much as I love the ladies, I have no desire to go to prison.
Completely fair enough. And many moons ago, before you were the editor-in-chief of DIVA magazine, you were an avid reader. Tell us about your first experience with DIVA.
Okay, so I was a closeted little lesbian living in Leeds, and I was so deeply in the closet. It took me a long time to come out. I didn't come out fully until I was in my 20s. And I discovered DIVA magazine in a branch of WH Smith in Leeds train station.
Classic.
Real classic story. And I think it was on the top shelf, because obviously the queer magazines, they need to be right up there with the porn, because, you know, to many people, they are the equivalent. And I got my copy of DIVA, and I think I you know, hid it inside a copy of Cosmopolitan, which makes it sound like I stole DIVA. I did not. Always pay for your queer media. Please support queer media. But I did pay for my copy. I don't think any eye contact was made during the purchase transaction. And I smuggled it home like contraband. And I remember being in my teenage bedroom in Leeds and secretly reading it. And I think there's something so powerful. I always loved magazines, but they never loved me back until I found DIVA. And I think there's something as a queer person about that very personal experience. And it's just you and this magazine. And what you're holding is the the written, documented proof that you're not alone, the evidence that, in fact, there's this whole community out there of people like you, and that your stories are worth being told. And I cannot tell you how profound, really, like how moving that was for me. And so now, as editor of DIVA, it's a really special full circle thing. And it also means I have a lot of empathy and connection with the readers, because now when I meet readers, so many of them have, you know, variations on that theme of that first moment when they found it and how it made them feel. And that's just magic.
And speaking about personal experiences, you're about to release a memoir. And I'm curious, how would you like to make people feel that maybe pick this book up?
Wow, thank you very much. I'm very excited about the memoir. It's just been announced. It's called What a Girl Wants, a true story of sexuality and self-discovery. I want this book to make people laugh. I love a joke, and I'm very in favour of, as queer people, we're often very funny. You know, if humour is tragedy plus time, then we've had a lot of trauma to deal with. So we've built up some resilient coping queer joy humour. So I'm hoping it makes people laugh. I'm hoping people find it powerful, interesting, galvanising, thought-provoking, moving. And ultimately, I want readers, however they identify, to feel good about themselves. And the book, it is a coming-of-age memoir. But it's weaving that journey that I've been on in with very pressing feminist themes. So it's covering everything from body image to catcalling to dating to heartbreak to grief to hate crime. It's all in there. So I hope people like it, because it does mean a lot to me.
I cannot wait to read it, and I'm sure the audience watching feel the same way. Now we're having this conversation the FT Live studio. We're in FT London office right now, and I'm sure lots of people are wondering how you got started in journalism.
Great question. So I got started in journalism. Well, I should start by saying, strap yourselves in, because it took me a while. I always loved writing. I always loved reading. And I always, you know, wrote for the school magazine or the college paper or all sorts of things like that. And I didn't study journalism in my degree, and I wanted to do like a master's or a postgrad afterwards. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that work financially. It just wasn't feasible. So I didn't do that. Instead, I had a series of increasingly soul-destroying day jobs, which I think is maybe quite relatable for some people. And all the time I was doing those, I never stopped the writing. So I'd be doing that, but then I'd also always be doing something creative. I'd be writing articles, or I'd be blogging, or I did like bits of copywriting, and I did lots of writing for free, and some writing for like little bits of money, even that felt quite exciting, just, you know, that my words were worth something.
Being paid for your art is very validating.
Well, exactly. And it always just felt like this impenetrable world, because I didn't know anyone in that world. But then, so I'd been sort of slogging away trying to make it into something for quite a while. And then I saw the job advert for the editorial assistant in DIVA. And I thought, okay, wow, this is something. I mean, as we've already established, I have a lot of feelings about DIVA. So that was a really exciting thing to see as a part-time freelance journalist who wanted to really go for it. And I remember I poured my heart and soul into that application. It was one where you wrote an article, you did a social media campaign, you did a video, as well as all the usual stuff that you have to do. And I did all that, and I thought, okay, here we go, let's give it a go. And then I got the job after interviewing and so on. And I just felt so excited, because it was like I was finally feeling like there was a place where my voice as a writer and as a lesbian, where both of those things could coexist. And that was how I started in DIVA. And that was kind of how I got the foot through the door to make it a full-time career to be a writer.
Well, I'd love to talk about that. You are a very, very visible lesbian journalist. Some might even say a celesbian. L word lingo there. And I want to know whether you find you're having this platform and being so visible, as for having your work tied so closely linked with your identity. Do you find that to be quite liberating? And do you also find that there's a limitation as well that can come with that? What's your experience been?
I think that's a super interesting question. So I think that for a long time, I thought being a lesbian limited me as a writer, because I had very much an insecurity that who cares what some random lesbian from Leeds has to say. But then obviously when I started writing about it for a living, it was liberating, exciting, and it kind of accelerated my career that I'd been trying to get started in a real meaningful way for so long. So it felt like a powerful, positive force. And I think there's a lot to be said for, if you are a writer who cares about personal writing, and I love being an editor and I've done all kinds of journalism, but I do really enjoy doing first person and funny or reflective or powerful essay writing and that sort of thing, hence the memoir. And I think that, it's that thing of this thing I've been so ashamed of for so long, actually embracing that and seeing it as something that helps to give me a unique slant on things, a specific take on things that perhaps not all the other writers have. I'm sure they've got their own fabulous takes, but so that was really powerful. But then it's interesting because it's really, I'm very, very lucky to do a job that I do deeply, deeply, deeply in my bones care about. But it's also like you're on the front line of both all the happy, wonderful things that happen to our community and the terrible, challenging, awful things that are going on. And that's quite full on. And I don't exclusively write about being a lesbian, but it is a lot of what I do. And I'd say that I've found it so far, I'd say on balance, definitely liberating. But I am also aware that, we're in the middle of Lesbian Visibility Week. So, lesbian voices still need to be uplifted and amplified even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful that you've had that experience and that, you turned one of your biggest insecurities actually into the thing that's made you so successful. Outside of your time in queer media, were the environments that you worked in or were in general supportive of you and your identity kind of as a whole, especially as a feminine presenting lesbian? Oh,
great question, Tamara. So when I was talking about those soul destroying day jobs, so I've been in my job at DIVA where, I think if anything, being a lesbian helped me get the gig. And obviously that's a really unique workplace where your queerness is celebrated and embraced in a really gorgeous, gorgeous way. When I was in other workplaces, I didn't always come out at work, to be honest. And I didn't always feel either safe to do so, or sometimes you just don't want to deal with navigating 100 relative strangers' individual responses to who you are and your life. Sometimes you're like, no, this job is already painful enough. If I'm being totally honest. And then sometimes I did come out. And when I did come out, I certainly experienced some negativity. And I think for me, and perhaps this is linked to what you said about being a femme lesbian, it was quite a lot of sexual harassment, which so many women go through. But it was with this very specific slant because they knew I was a lesbian. It's like that made it seem like there was some kind of challenge or prize, or, it charged it with this really gross and completely inappropriate energy. And there was a lot of that. Yes, so not always pleasant. And I always remember one time I was sent on this training, workplace health and safety training course for a week. And we were in the coffee break, and I hadn't come out to anyone on this training course. We're in the coffee break, and I'm sat there next to these two men, and I can overhear their conversation. And one of them's talking about a lesbian colleague. And he says, you have to be all right with everything these days, don't you? And then there's this pause, and he says, but are you? And his friend says, no. And he says, me neither. And then this man who's just said this stands up because he's our trainer. And the next module is diversity in the workplace. And I'm sat there as a lesbian, having just had this happen right there. And, it's a small thing, but the emotional turmoil of that moment as a queer person to suddenly feel so unsafe from this person who's literally being paid to tell us how to be diverse and inclusive. Whew, that was a lot. So, yes, I've definitely had some not ideal experiences.
Well, we're hoping that, we can be a part of that change. FT Proud is has an incredible committee, and lots of organisations have kind of put more effort into creating more inclusive and safe environments.
And you know what, Tamara, just to say on that, I think it's so gorgeous to see, because all of these places where I worked, none of them had an LGBTQIA network group. So maybe if they had, there would have been I would have felt a signal of safety and solidarity. And maybe then I would have felt more empowered to be able to stand up to some of this stuff. Because I think I felt quite isolated in dealing with all of that, apart from talking to my friends about it. But I do think it's fantastic when there are things like FT Proud that do really champion the community and their employees. I think it's beautiful to see.
Speaking about diversity, DIVA magazine proudly writes for all LGBTQIA women and non-binary people, but that wasn't always the case. When the magazine started, it was predominantly a kind of lesbian forward publication, but as editor-in-chief, including trans, non-binary people is very important to you. Could you speak on that, please?
Yes, I can definitely speak on that. It's so important that we don't just speak for cis, white, femme-presenting lesbians. It's so important that we speak for all intersections in our community. And in terms of being trans inclusive, DIVA is proudly and unequivocally trans inclusive. I'm the editor, and I'm a cis lesbian, and I'm proudly trans inclusive. The publisher, Linda Riley, she's a cis lesbian, she's proudly trans inclusive. And that's really important to us. It's really fundamental, actually, to the core of what DIVA does. And there are some places where you'll see this story that's being presented, that lesbian existence and trans existence are in opposition. And I understand that that's how this vocal minority feel, but it does not in any way reflect my feelings as a lesbian or the feelings of any of the community that I know. And actually, studies show that lesbians are among the most trans inclusive in our community, which is pretty awesome. And I think it's really important that we take that stance. One thing, there's many gorgeous things about my job, and there's many glamorous, exciting things like, meeting people from the L Word, and all of these moments are
Tomorrow evening, the DIVA Awards.
Well, indeed, the DIVA Awards. Lots of razzle dazzle, really fabulous stuff. But for me, the stuff that is really thrilling is when you hear from a reader who's been impacted by DIVA, by the work we do, by the writing we feature. And to get those messages, it just means the world to all of us. And we do hear from trans readers often about how it makes them feel. Like, I got an email the other day, I am a trans dyke, and DIVA lets me know that it's okay to be both those things. And how powerful is that? It's lovely.
That's really wonderful to hear. Now, we've touched on this briefly before, but Lesbian Visibility Week is separate to Pride Week, and in terms of the importance of it, a quote that encapsulates the nuance for me, American literary scholar Terry Castle, who once wrote that a lesbian is not a gay man. As we speak, the House of Commons are holding a debate on Lesbian Visibility Week, and in your view, what makes lesbian or queer women's experience unique compared with, say, a gay cis man?
So I think that if we talk about the prejudice that you can face for a moment. So lesbophobia, it's like misogyny multiplied by homophobia, yeah? So it's this thing of intersectionality. So people are not just responding to the fact that you're queer, they're also responding to your gender, and they may have prejudices there as well. And I think that, you know, there's many wonderful things about being a lesbian. I'm such a fan of it. I'm, you know, do it for a living. Also in my free time, I should add, to be clear. Great hobby. Hobby, you know, when you can make your passion your profession, quite literally. But, you know, there's many fabulous things. And it's so important to celebrate that queer joy and that lesbian joy. And this week is so about those things. And, you know, that's a big reason why Linda Riley founded it. But also there's a lot of challenges still facing our community. And one thing I know that is really affecting our community is our fight for IVF equality. Like, we're still not there with that. The hate crime, and the specifically sexualized hate crime towards lesbians, is horrifying. And the lack of visibility, the feeling that sometimes in some queer spaces they can be dominated by men sometimes. And, you know, I'm just thinking about examples locally, like here in the UK. If we look at our siblings globally, then there are so many very real and very frightening things going on right now. So I think it's really important to understand and to acknowledge the uniqueness of each experience. And we want to stand up for all of us. We want to fight for all of us. We're stronger together.
Absolutely.
But we also want to understand and listen to each other and realize that the challenges we face may be different depending on all the different aspects of who we are.
Yeah, totally. And on the subject of Lesbian Visibility Week, we are arguably experiencing more exposure than ever to queer women in mainstream media. It sort of feels like, you know, lesbians are everywhere. Between a sapphic pop renaissance, we've got Renee Rapp, star of the latest Mean Girls film, and killing it on stage at Coachella, being introduced by the OG cast members of the L Word, just like mind explosion. We've got incredible pop stars like Rina Sawayana. We have Kim Petras, trans women winning awards and being celebrated for being themselves and their talent in all its glory. And you can't go anywhere on the London Underground for love nor money without seeing a poster for Love Lies Bleeding with Kristen Stewart. And with all of this in mind, does it feel like progress has been made?
Goodness, I mean, let's all just take a moment for all of that, but for the Love Lives Bleeding poster, like, let's take a moment for the poster. So it definitely feels like, and it's so interesting actually, because if we go back to where we started this conversation, me being a closeted little lesbian teenager, and the first representation I saw was Bad Girls, yeah? Like, I could never have imagined we'd have this amount of fabulous and also really cool, like making it like showing how cool and awesome it can be to be queer. Couldn't have fathomed that would happen. And I've kind of seen, you know, the rise of sapphic cool in real time play out, and that has been thrilling and exciting. And 100% we have come a long way, and it's brilliant that we have all that. I think that we need to make sure that we're also, you know, that representation is also intersectional. And I think that there's still by far not enough representation for queer people of colour, queer disabled people, queer people of all different identities. And I think that it's great we have more visibility, but with visibility, there can be more vulnerability. So as well as the rise of all these gorgeous, fabulous, exciting things, we're seeing a rise in hate crime. We're seeing a rise in horrible transphobic rhetoric online and in the media. And in politics, it's been used as a political football. So we're seeing that, yeah, we've got all these things to feel great about, and we should, like, we need that, and the world needs that. Everyone's life's better for those things. It's great. But we also need to realize that just because those cool moments are happening, that doesn't mean that we're there. That doesn't mean the battle is won. There is still so much more that we need to strive for.
Mm. And in terms of the kind of bringing it back to, you know, everyday lives of queer women, it seems like there are more spaces for queer women popping up all over different cities in the UK, more club nights than ever, tickets always selling out. And we are soon to be the opening of La Caminiera, which is a lesbian bar / cafe in East London. The opening of that, so many people showed up that they had to shut the street. This became a news story, actually. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were on we've had a decline actually in spaces for queer women over the past 40 years, which has actually been quite depressing. So why do you think everything's changing now?
I'm so glad you've asked about this. I think that as queer people, we have always found ways to find each other. Even, you know, hundreds of years ago, we were finding ways, or, you know, early on in the 20th century, we were finding ways to connect with each other, to forge out little spaces for our community. And that's always been so, so important that we had those spaces. And then, as you say, there was certainly a decline in particularly in lesbian bars. But in the last, you know, year or two, I have seen firsthand working at DIVA that there is something going on. Like there's something in the water, and it is pretty gay, and it's great, and it's this like surge. It feels like this like a revolution almost, like reclaiming the nightlife that's been denied. And it also, something that strikes me about it is that there's an energy with it. There's this kind of defiant visibility and defiant claiming of identity and celebrating that identity. Like if you look at, like, you know, a night like Butch Please, like, and there's those for all sorts of different identities, which is gorgeous, but ones that really, say if you are a butch person who goes through your life handling, unfortunately, sometimes butch phobia and all of those things that come with that, going to a place like Butch Please, where you can be butch as anything, and
it's actually cool.
It's cool, exactly. It's cool and hot, and we love it. And that's so powerful. And you know, I love to see it. I love to be there. And I think that it's that. I mean, maybe it's that we were tired of being told all our lesbian bars were closing down, and then all the cool kids got together and they created a new wave of queer nightlife. And I'm so glad they did. I love it, and it's so exciting.
Very, very exciting times. It feels like it's difficult to know what to go to because there are so many events. I want to turn now to a very special edition of DIVA magazine. So this month celebrates the 30th anniversary of the magazine, and you were obviously instrumental in putting together this issue. And I wanted to know what the most important stories were for you to cover in this special issue.
So, I'm sorry, I'm just distracted thinking.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, love. I mean, that's a bit, you know, I shouldn't just be staring at this issue that I've edited. That doesn't seem great, does it? But do you know what I'm distracted by? Because all of these covers from since 1994, when it was first launched, all of these iconic covers, and the fact that an independent queer magazine primarily aimed at women and non-binary people is still going strong after 3 decades is so, so powerful. In terms of this issue, I think for me, it was really, and for the whole team, it was really important that we celebrate how far we've come, that we look at the legacy and at the history of our community in those 3 decades. We look at how far we've come, how far we have to go, but we also look at the future. So it's not just a navel-gazing nostalgia fest, much fun as they are.
So tempting. If you do want a nostalgia fest, Pod DIVA have been doing these very short mini episode countdown each year of the issues of that year, and it is, my God.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? So this was the brainchild of our podcast producer, Rachel Shelley, who's amazing. my co-host on Pod Diva, and also you may know her as the L Word's Helena Peabody. So just give a shout out to Rachel because she was really, really passionate about that project. So as well as the looking back and investigating all that stuff and celebrating those pivotal moments for our community, it was also about, okay, so here's where we are now. Where are we going? And these are the game changers we're standing on the shoulders of. Who is shaping that conversation now? And how do we move forward and create the future that we want to live in for our community? So it's kind of this balancing act of those two forces. And it's also making sure that it's a great read, that it's got, you know, funny stuff, serious stuff, interviews, celebrities, voices, a diversity of voices. We've got some great stuff in there about butch identity and bisexuality and all sorts of interesting stuff. So it's all of that. But I think also the key thing is getting that balance right of looking back and honouring and exploring the past while also firmly looking to the future, because we want to be shaping that future for us to live in.
Absolutely. And I will just say, if you have any burning questions, now is the time to send them in, because I'm about to ask Roxy my last question. What does Lesbian Visibility Week mean to you?
Lesbian Visibility Week. I think for me, it means community. It means celebration. It means very, very long hours because I'm doing all sorts. It's been a long week, but it's been a lovely week full of awesome, exciting things. And I think it's about celebrating the diversity of experience within our community and using it as an opportunity to uplift and celebrate and really shout about all the great things, but also to champion those causes that we still need to fight for. So to really shine the spotlight on our wonderful, inclusive community.
Wonderful. And what a week it has been so far. Now I'm going to turn to some questions that people have sent in. And okay, let's go for Alex Thompson. Roxy, as editor of DIVA magazine, what have been some of the most memorable moments or stories you covered during your tenure?
Okay, right, great question. Thank you for asking. Some of the most memorable stories that we've covered, there's been we do a lot of celebrity coverage and pop culture coverage. So there's been a lot of real sort of pinch me moments that have been really exciting for our community. We've done, you know, I grew up watching the L Word, which I think is a show that's also impacted your life, and some of you may be familiar with it. If you're not familiar with the L Word, it is like, well, the original tagline when it first launched was same sex, different city. And it's like just full of queer women and non-binary people and so much lesbian drama, so much lesbian drama. So, you know, a lot of queer women and non-binary people, that's a really special show too. And it was to me. And then to interview the people behind it and meet them and be working with them, that's bananas, that's bonkers. In terms of stories that we've covered, I'm really proud of I think the features, the in-depth features that I've commissioned as editor, where we investigate things, but not with broad brushstrokes. So, for example, a different publication might run something about what's it like being a trans person, great. But in DIVA, we will run things like T for T dating, which means trans for trans dating, the power of these relationships, and which is a piece that my wonderful deputy editor Nick Crossara wrote. And it was looking at, okay, so if you are a trans person in a relationship with another trans person, what is that particular nuanced experience like? What is that connectedness like? And how does that impact and empower and affect you? Or we might look at the experiences of, for instance, Black queer people on dating apps. We've done a feature on that. So I think I'm excited by when we really drill into specific nuanced experiences from within our community, and then it kind of look at those from different angles. They really excite me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the power of queer media really is getting to tell so many different stories and giving people the chance to feel seen as well. So Kim Long, not a question, but Kim says, just shouting out my fellow Northern journalists.
Oh, Kim, yeah, shout out, absolutely. So lovely. We Northerners, we get very excited if we meet another Northerner. We do. But lovely. Thank you very much for the shout out, Kim. Loving that.
Now, I love this question. Ella Mackenzie, how do you balance your role as a leader in the LGBTQIA community with your personal life and self-care?
Oh my goodness, what a great and important question. Okay, so when I said earlier about being on the front line of both the fabulous things and the painful, frightening things, I think that something I really think about as an editor is looking after my team's well-being, because we're queer people talking about sometimes awful issues facing our community. So making sure that all of our well-being is okay and that we're all talking to each other and that we're all doing whatever we need to do to have that self-care. I think on a personal level, how do I balance it? And it's to be completely honest, sometimes it's a bit tricky because, you know, the very fabric of my personal identity is what Diva magazine's all about. Yeah. And so, you know, I've in some ways monetized my identity and my relationships. But
capitalist society.
Well, here we are. But the flip side of that is, so how do you ever then detach from it? How do you ever then switch off and have those moments? For me personally, I like getting in nature. I like me and my lovely girlfriend, we live by the sea. We used to live in London, but we moved out to Hastings. And so I love being, you know, a leisure in the ocean. I love it.
Water swimmer.
Well, maybe not cold water swimmer. I don't want to big myself up too much. I know a lot of people have had a lot of epiphanies. I haven't had that, but I have loved having a paddle, and I've loved seeing the seals, and I've loved that feeling in nature. And I think that if I have a really tough day, here we go. If I have a really tough day at work, if it's been really full on, if there's awful stuff happening and I'm, you know, it's affected me, then me and my lovely girlfriend will go out to the sea, and we will go out to where it's quiet and it's peaceful, and we will be there, and we will look at the expanse of everything, and we will feel, I mean, this sounds very cheesy, but it's true, we will feel the beauty of being in that moment together. Aww. And I think, gosh, I went very rom-com there, didn't I? Just wishing a very cheesy rom-com for you there. But yeah, so we'll do that. And I think that probably is something that helps me to have that balance and that perspective and that moment that's just for us.
Oh, that's beautiful. Giving us all hope out there. Sophie Larson asks, what future projects or initiatives are you most excited about, both at Diva magazine and in your personal advocacy work?
Okay, let's see. What am I most excited about? So this is a brilliant question. What I'm now doing mentally is, because I'm currently in the white hot heat of Lesbian Visibility Week, and we have Diva Awards tomorrow. So I'm mentally thinking, okay, because at the moment we can get through today. It's going to be great. We can get through this. I'm very much in that place. But great question. Thank you. Let's think about the future as well. So Pride is coming up, which is always a big time for Diva, of course. Last year we had a really brilliant experience. We were in Pride in London. We really championed the amazing trans-created campaign by Jude, the activist, who created the Trans People Are Loved campaign, along with some other awesome activists. So you should look up the campaign and find out about the amazing work they're doing. And we very much platformed that and uplifted that through Diva. So I was there in the parade with my team, with my colleagues, with my missus, and we were marching through the streets of London with a big banner saying trans people are loved, and that was really powerful. So I'm really excited for our Pride plans this year, although I cannot confirm exactly what they are at this time. And I think I'm excited about opportunities to look at ways to create really meaningful, powerful spaces for queer people, and to make sure that those are as inclusive and diverse and fun and stimulating as possible. So there's loads of stuff to be excited about.
Lovely. I'm so glad that you're having all of these incredible moments to shine, because you are a powerhouse. You are a powerhouse in the queer community. One question from Alfie Sutton. How do you think the mainstream media industry can better support and uplift LGBTQ plus voices and stories?
Okay, that's interesting. So I think the mainstream media industry, I think that it's really important to understand that the queer experience is not one thing. I think it's really important to realise that there's not just one queer story to be told. And if you have within your publication or your organisation told a queer story, then I love that, and I'm happy that you did that, if you told it respectfully and authentically and involved queer people in the creation of it. But I think that there can be a sense that, okay, we've done that now, or, you know, in Pride Month, there'll be lots of coverage run, which will be, I'm sure, more queer slanted than usual, and that's great. I understand that. That's lovely. But also to celebrate and uplift queer voices all year long. And I think as well, particularly with trans issues, and I'll give a practical tip now, actually, there's an organisation called Trans Media Watch. So if you're not familiar with Trans Media Watch, look them up. And if you're telling a story that is about trans lives, then, you know, you can contact them and ask for guidance if you're not sure exactly the best way to do it. And also, I think, if in doubt, talk to people in the community. Like, make sure that we are involved in the telling of these stories. And also, don't feel like it always has to be super depressing. Like, don't feel like if you're not
kill all the characters on the films.
No. Don't feel like you have to do that. Like, yes, do raise awareness and do galvanize people to action and do inform people about the things that are going on. That's 100% important. Like, do that, definitely do that. But also understand that being queer is really cool. Being queer can be fun and celebratory and exciting. And if you're a queer person and most of the representation you see of your community is depressing or frightening, that feels isolating and that doesn't feel good. So I think it's really important to get that balance of the joy and the challenges with it.
So one more question that we have, and I'm so glad this question has been asked, because I think you are definitely going to be a very helpful voice on this. Angel Rininsland, I hope I'm saying that right, asks, what advice can you give to lesbians who are either newly out or new to seeing themselves as lesbians, particularly in the context of navigating the workplace?
Okay, so what advice can I give? First of all, congratulations. Like, how lovely is that you've been able to come out, whether that's to yourself or to other people in your life. I think that's really, really powerful. I think that we're used to hearing about coming out stories these days, but I think as a queer person that's a real big thing, and that's a real powerful, beautiful thing. So congratulations would be my first thing. Then I probably want to give them a cuddle and say, well done, darling, it's all going to be fine, don't worry. A consenting cuddle. So I better clarify that. And then I think in terms of like navigating how to come out in the workplace. So I think the first thing to say is I don't think anyone should feel pressured to do it. And you don't owe me coming out in your workplace. I want you to be safe. I want you to be comfortable. And I think that it's really important that you feel good about coming out in your workplace, that you feel that it's an environment where you can do that. And if, for example, there are things like employee network groups and so on, or out role models, that's super helpful to signal to you and to let you know that this is an inclusive, welcoming environment. I think if you've decided, all right, I'm going to do it, I think I would recommend, right, I'm going to do this 2 ways. If you are nervous that, look at me, the lesbian agony aunt. I've got really into it, haven't I? I'm really giving you a lot of advice here. I think, right, if you're nervous, if you have a sense, I want to do this, but I'm not sure if it's going to go well, then what I recommend is you privately, on your own, you think through that scenario of your, what if it doesn't go great? What if someone does say something that makes you feel, and think about how you want to then respond and think ahead so that you're not in real time going through 1,000 different emotions. So think ahead. How do I want to respond if someone does that? Do I want to, what demeanor do I want? What energy do I want in that situation? Bearing in mind that this is also your workplace. So you want to think how you want to conduct yourself there in a way that feels good for you, however that looks. If you feel like you want to just come out at work and you don't really want it to be a big deal, then I feel like the casual mention, like you just act like it's not a big deal. You drop it into conversation as if it's not, some big announcement, because it shouldn't have to be. So if someone says, what did you do at the weekend? Oh, me and my girlfriend went to La Caminera. Or so please, they are, and they're all fabulous. They're all brilliant. There's a lot of very good ones. And so you can drop it in like that, or you could say something like, oh, I've been watching this show lately. I can't get enough of it. There's this awesome lesbian character. I'll be honest, I've got a bit of a crush on her. Like you can say it in ways where it's not that big loaded thing. Like, hello, everyone. I'd like to declare myself. I am a lesbian. You may continue with your meeting. That's one approach, but you can do it in a kind of casual, natural way. And sometimes people's energy will mirror and reflect yours sometimes. So if you act like it's no big deal, which it shouldn't be, then fingers crossed, they will mirror that and be like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, great. And then it's lovely. And then you can just, carry on and it's out there and just feel like that's not something you need to hide.
And to piggyback off Angel's question, there's also bisexuality, bisexual invisibility as well. So do you think the same advice would apply for someone who's bi? And, is that, he worried about, is that confusing for your colleagues to be dating, multiple genders, that kind of thing?
Gordon Bennett, these colleagues, it shouldn't be confusing for them, but it may be confusing for them. I think that if you're bi, I think, yes, that same advice applies. I think that it depends, because I hope that anyone coming out in the workplace doesn't have a negative experience, but sometimes you may be asked questions that aren't great, or questions. Also, you might be asked some questions that come from a place of a lack of knowledge, but not necessarily a lack of good faith. Like they might be a nice person who perhaps hasn't met someone before who's queer, or haven't realized. I'm sure they have met someone. And so then I think it goes back to that thing of thinking how you want to handle those questions. If you do want to be out as a bisexual person in the workplace, and you think maybe some people are going to ask some questions, you want to think about how you handle that. And I also want to say, while we're talking about bisexuality, DIVA did start primarily for lesbians. An early tagline was, for the lesbian in you, which is, still a lot of fun to say out loud.
It sounds like a sort of a shampoo.
It does. It does. But we are inclusive of the whole community now, and that very much includes our bisexual siblings. We have so many bi readers, we have bi writers, bi people in the staff, bi cover stars, and we do loads of features that dig into the bisexual experience and the bisexual perspective on things. And I think as well, sometimes people can respond to you sharing something about yourself. So if you are a femme presenting queer person, or if you are a bisexual woman, or however that looks, people can respond in a way where they meet that with skepticism and doubt, which is a horrible. I've had it happen to me an awful lot. So many people have told me, no, you're not a lesbian, because for some reason they feel that they know me better than I do. And I think the thing that I'd say about that is just, I'm really keen to say to any bi people or any people who felt that watching, there isn't a hierarchy of queerness. It doesn't make you less queer, and it doesn't make who you are any less valid.
Yeah, we don't need to worry about the Kinsey scale.
Yeah, you don't. Well, yeah.
So you don't need to be, I'm 50% this, 50%
No.
that.
No, there's nothing is like more important or more valid way to be queer. It's all great. And the whole point of being queer, the literal point of it, of being queer in the world, is being whoever you are. Yeah, and not having to apologize for that, and not having to hide that, and not having to feel shame for that. So whether that's that you're a lesbian, or you're a bi woman, or you're a trans person, or you're asexual or intersex, or whatever that looks like for you, the whole point is to be yourself. And if anybody tries to shame you or make you feel bad, that says nothing about who you are, and it says a lot about who they are. So you take note of that, and you think, okay, that's interesting, or you respond however's right for you to respond in the moment, but just know that it doesn't diminish who you are. They can't take that. That's you, and that's valid, and that's gorgeous.
And it seems to me that a lot of those metrics and ways of thinking, or ways of trying to understand queerness, are kind of set up by heterosexual people.
Yeah.
Which is quite odd, really, because we're just trying to make ourselves understood, when really it should be the other way round.
Yeah, definitely.
And I wanted to ask you now about still time for questions if you have any last ones. But I'm just so excited to be sitting here with Roxy. I just want to pick her brains. I want to chat about the status of queer independent media, which has sadly not been immune to layoffs seen across the journalism industry. What do you think, DIVA aside, what do you think the future of queer media as a whole is? Going into AI layoffs, like how do you see DIVA? What do you see things looking like in 10 years?
So if I look into my little queer crystal ball, what do I predict for the future of queer media? I think it's really easy to get, or not really easy, but like it's quite tempting, and you can certainly see a lot of reasons to feel quite dispirited and quite down and quite negative about the future of queer media, particularly because just looking at the future of media generally, and print journalism and journalism in general, as I think a lot of people watching this will already know, like just looking at that can be scary enough. But I like to be optimistic. I think DIVA magazine has been going for 30 years, and who could have predicted that in 1994? I think that it's important that queer media, if we're talking about queer specific media, that we grow and we evolve with the times and with our community, that we don't kind of get stuck in the past or in set ways of doing things, and also that we embrace changes in the media industry where we can, and try and find ways to make that work for us. And I think the thing with queer media particularly, and it's a little bit like the nightlife resurgence that we were talking about. We are a resilient people. Yeah. We have always been good at coming up with new innovative ways to do things, to share our stories, and to create community. And so I think embracing that, and I think trying to look at instead of thinking of all these reasons, like not shying away from the fact there are very real challenges in the media industry, but almost trying to queer the way you look at that.
Ooh,
yeah, there you go. That's what I was looking in the crystal ball, and that's what it said. Queer the way you look at it. But yeah, queering your whole approach to it. So, you know, not just assuming that there's one set way to do things, but being prepared to look around that and to think of new ways to exist and to share stories and to reach people and to engage them.
Well, on that note, Roxy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the FT London studio today. Thank you very much for joining us for this exclusive LGBTQ plus leaders fireside chat. Roxy, where can viewers find you?
Thank you very much. And also, Tamara, thank you so much. You've been such a good host. Like, haven't you been great? You've been fantastic. Your questions have been on point. You've been really a star. So thank you so much to you and all the team for having me. If you like what you see and you'd like to see what I'm doing next, you can find me on social media. I am at Roxy Bourdillon on most social media platforms. You can find DIVA magazine, which I thoroughly recommend. You can subscribe to DIVA, you can buy DIVA, you can keep up with that, and you can look out for my book coming next year. And whenever the pre-orders are open, you can pre-order that, and that will make me eternally love you. But yes, so just on the usual social media platforms and following DIVA, and DIVA on all social media platforms is at DIVA Magazine.
Wonderful. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Proud FT and FT Women Networks who have organised this event. Thank you to the FT Live team for putting this together. And thank you to you, everyone who's been watching, submitting your questions and interacting with us. We would not be here if you are not here. So thank you so much for joining. And thanks again to Roxy, and happy Lesbian Visibility Week.
Happy Lesbian Visibility Week. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon. Goodbye.